of Florida is heating up. Nearly a dozen candidates have entered the race, and Election Day is still more than 9 months away. One of the prominent candidates on the Democratic side joins me in studio right now. We're pleased to have Mayor Philip Levine of Miami Beach. Good morning, Mayor.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming in here. I appreciate that. It's early, but as of latest polling, I think you're still polling in the single digits. I know that it is 9 months away, but what is your plan to get your name out to the people of Florida and get the Democratic nomination and eventually the governor's seat?
Well, I can tell you this, name ID is a Bible commodity. And right now, I understand I'm in the second position. I've moved up in the Democratic side. I understand we're right there in a great poll position, and we're exactly where we want to be. Because, it's one of these things with the people of Florida to meet me, to understand what my vision is for the state of Florida. Yeah, there's no question about it, but we've been all over the state. We just finished a live from Florida's living room tour on a great bus where we're actually talking to the people, talking to the customer, going into their homes, meeting them, and that has been very, very successful. I believe over the next 3 or 4 of my months that the Florida people are going to get to know Philip Levine.
Okay, interesting. A Tallahassee insider that I spoke to referred to you as, quote, the opposite of Rick Scott, which may be a compliment, actually, to you. It's been 19 years and 3 governors since the state last went blue. What makes you think it's ready to go Democrat this time?
Well, I think right now there's a big wave going on. I think, first of all, people want someone in office that actually has not only public experience like I do, but also private experience. So I kind of bring both to the picture right now. And listen, the bottom line is change is good. I think people want to see change in the state of Florida. My whole mission is, it's one of these things where I want to bring companies, I want innovation, I want NASA to be our Silicon Valley, I want the Tampa Bay area to have the kind of companies come in here, not $8.25 an hour jobs, but I want to explain how we can bring the great companies of America here. That's with great education, great environmental policy, great health care benefits, and of course, all types of non-discrimination policies. That's the HR manual of the most admired companies in America. Why aren't we doing the same thing? And listen, the governor and I are very different on many things. I think the only similarity, of course, is that we do come from the private sector.
The president made some disparaging remarks about Haiti and some African countries recently. A lot of Haitians live in Florida, and your community as well.
Sure.
What are your thoughts about President Trump?
Well, I can tell you this. I don't run around the state of Florida talking about President Trump. As you know, I spent a lot of time making sure and trying the best I could that I didn't believe he was the most qualified person to be president. But to run around the state and just say negative things about the president is not a vision. It's not a mission. And I don't do that. What I do is I talk about what my vision is. And my vision, once again, is how do we bring Florida and up our game economically? So, people who criticize and said, you're not out there criticizing President Trump. I said, listen, the media, you do a great job at it. What I'm going to do is show the people of Florida another way to move forward.
We are not yet into February, so still in the first month of the year, there have been 11 school shootings, which kind of flies under the radar when you think about it. It was kind of disturbing earlier this week. The 2 people died in the Kentucky shooting, and it almost seemed like it wasn't even an issue anymore. Are there gun laws in the state of Florida that need to be changed?
Listen, the big issue we have is preemption. In Tallahassee, as you know, they have total control. They're taking more control of the local municipalities. They're preempting. There's a House bill right now to preempt local municipalities. Local governments are not allowed to even offer any program for responsible gun ownership. And that's a problem. Listen, I'm a gun owner. I have a concealed weapons permit. I think that what we need to do is make sure that we have more responsible gun ownership, better background checks. Folks with mental illness that shouldn't own a gun shouldn't have a gun. Folks that have background issues shouldn't have a weapon. But the bottom line is, unfortunately, we have special interests in Tallahassee that don't allow it. Do you know that in Florida, as a mayor or a local elected leader, if you try to in any way put a program together for more responsible gun ownership, the governor can remove you from office?
Well, that's my point. How are you going to fight that special interest group?
Well, I think the fact of the matter is that I believe we need to go to Tallahassee and we need to actually figure out a way to have more responsible gun ownership. I think as a governor like myself, who I believe will bring people together, I think we can do it. I think people understand we got a big problem. I think you need a governor who actually doesn't accept money from the NRA, which, by the way, they ain't giving me money. So I can tell you I'm going to do it.
Okay. The death penalty. Since 1976, Florida has executed more people than all but 3 other states. The studies show that the cost of death penalty cases can be sometimes as much as $500,000 higher than the cost of other cases where people just get a life sentence. What's your position on the death penalty in the state of Florida?
In regards to the death penalty, and I'll talk about that in 1 second, I could tell you that what I do believe in is restoring felons' rights. We need to make sure that in our country people get a second chance, and that's something which is very important going forward, and I'm a big advocate of that. As far as the death penalty, the bottom line is today we have all types of DNA testing. We should make sure all the way to the nth degree that the person is guilty of that heinous crime. I personally believe in the death penalty. If it's a heinous crime and the circumstances are such that it makes sense as a governor, I could tell you that I believe in it.
Along the lines of what you meant by felons' rights, there is a movement to remove the question, are you a felon, from job applications. Is that something that you support?
Absolutely. You know, we are a country of second chances. We're about the American dream. People make mistakes in life, but if they pay their debt to society, if they serve their sentence, let's not have them wear a scarlet letter for the rest of their life. Let's give them that opportunity to live the American dream again, and I believe in that.
Okay. You mentioned climate change. A big issue, obviously, for you, for the people of Miami Beach. There was a great article in the Washington Post last year talking about how Tampa Bay has sort of averted a disaster in terms of hurricanes for a long time now, and that if we were to get a really bad hurricane, that it would be a catastrophic disaster in this area. How do you convince people on the right who, you know, many of them consider it still a hoax? What would you do to change their mind?
Well, I can tell you in Miami Beach, we've converted a lot of people because Miami Beach has been a subject and a victim of climate change, sea level rise. We have a $500 million program. We're raising streets. We're putting in pumps. We're raising our seawalls. We're changing our building codes. And at the same time, we're making sure that solar panels can go on the roofs of buildings and homes for renewable energy. I think that after Irma, Harvey, Maria, I think that folks have woken up. We think that it's a #1 top issue in Florida. We need a chief resiliency officer out of Tallahassee in a major position. Listen, the bottom line is the rising ocean is not Republican, it's not Democrat. It just knows how to rise. And these once-in-a-century storms are unfortunately seen to be once-a-year storms. I understand the governor just woke up to the fact that Florida has hurricanes, and he addressed it this year in his final State of the Union, the State of the State address. Bottom line is we must make sure our state has a resiliency plan for the 21st century.
Okay. Offshore drilling. An issue here in Florida. The governor spoke to the Interior Secretary after the Trump administration made some plans to continue offshore drilling. He was able to get a waiver, and that still seems controversial whether that's actually going to stick.
Right.
But there are other Democratic coastal governors who have asked for the same treatment, who have not gotten it. If you're in that position, you would be the Democratic governor against the Trump administration. How do you plan to convince them that that's not what Florida needs?
Well, I can tell you right now, I'm convincing them right now because I'm running statewide television commercials talking about how we do not want offshore drilling. It's tragic. Look, we saw what happened with the BP oil spill. It was horrific. One of our core competencies is tourism. We destroyed a part of the beach. We would destroy our beaches. But more importantly than that, it's like going backwards. Our future is not fossil fuel. Our future is solar energy. We're called the Sunshine State. We're not the partly cloudy state. We need to make sure we focus on that. So to me, it's going in the wrong direction. My God, I would think that maybe Governor Scott wants to go back into the horse and buggy business in the state of Florida. This is yesterday's news. Now, of course, Governor Scott is only going back and saying he's against offshore drilling now because he wants to possibly run for Senate. Now, a few years ago, he was for offshore drilling. That's the problem with politicians, is that for some reason special interests get a hold of them. I can tell you, as governor, I will never allow offshore drilling in the state of Florida.
All right. Last question for you, Mayor. You are like Donald Trump, a businessman going into politics, like Governor Scott for that matter. Yeah. Are you ready to, there's been a lot of criticism obviously of the way that the president has run his administration. Are you ready to run an administration that can govern statewide?
Sure. Well, I'm a little different than Donald Trump. First of all, the best deal Donald Trump ever did was being born. Okay? I actually made my money myself. I started with $500. The second difference, of course, is I'm a proven two-term successful mayor of a city, Miami Beach. So I'm not going right from private sector to a large government job. I actually took a detour and became on the ground a very successful mayor.
All right. A man who knows a lot about beaches, the mayor of Miami Beach. Thank you very much for joining us, sir. We really appreciate that.